Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever wondered why some people seem, well, just completely trapped in their own limited perspective? Like they literally cannot concede a single point. Meanwhile, other people are constantly evolving, processing the world in these deep, really complex layers. Today, we're breaking down the exact psychological markers of the rigid mind. We're going to examine the behavioral patterns tied to low cognitive flexibility and a limited intellectual curiosity, and then we'll contrast those directly with the traits of a highly adaptable mind. If you're fascinated by what makes people tick, you are absolutely in the right place. All right, let's just dive right in. Here's our syllabus for today. Chapter 1, The Illusion of Competence. Then we'll hit Chapter 2, Anatomy of Cognitive Rigidity, followed by Chapter 3, The Emotionally Reactive Subject. After that, we'll flip it for Chapter 4, Profile of the Flexible Mind, and finally, Chapter 5, The Weight of Awareness.
Chapter 1, The Illusion of Competence. So let's look at our first psychological profile. It's really characterized by this extreme, almost loud certainty that actually masks a complete lack of genuine understanding. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a fascinating paradox. Individuals with lower cognitive flexibility vastly overestimate their own skills. And why? Because they literally lack the foundational knowledge to even realize what they don't know. It's kind of like someone confidently trying to build a house when they don't even know what a hammer is. The lower their intellectual curiosity, the less they can see their own blind spots.
And we've all seen this in the real world, right? Unwarranted confidence with zero underlying logic. You know, you meet someone, maybe it's a frustrating coworker or an internet troll who argues incredibly confidently, but they make absolutely zero sense. They're loud, they're certain, and, well, they're completely wrong. There's no real reasoning there, but their confidence, totally unshaken. Because of this illusion, this rigid mind shows basically zero intellectual curiosity. While adaptable people are always asking why, the rigid individual actively avoids new information. Complex topics just bore them, and they stick strictly to what feels comfortable. For them, learning isn't a chance to grow, it's a direct threat to a very fragile ego. They protect their limited worldview by just shutting out anything that challenges it.
Moving on to Chapter 2, Anatomy of Cognitive Rigidity.
The defining term here is cognitive rigidity. This is the actual psychological inability to think flexibly. A rigid mind just cannot process nuance, handle complexity, or entertain multiple perspectives at the same time. Instead of taking in new data and adjusting, their cognitive framework is basically frozen in place. In everyday life, this shows up as extreme black and white thinking. To the rigid mind, the world is either 100% right or 100% wrong, good or evil, success or total failure. There's zero gray area, mostly because processing that in-between space takes a level of mental flexibility and effort they just actively avoid. So, a crucial point here is how this shapes their entire worldview, leading to what's called an external locus of control. This is the core belief that life happens to a person, not because of their own choices. This external locus is a massive, defining pillar in the profile of low cognitive flexibility. And because of this, you get the massive blame game. They're constantly pointing fingers at outside forces. Bad luck, the boss, society in general, it is always someone else's fault. Which means, of course, they rarely look inward or put in the effort to take responsibility and fix their own problems. It's really just a defense mechanism to dodge accountability. Which brings us to Chapter 3, The Emotionally Reactive Subject. How does a mind that can't handle nuance react to a highly complicated world? Well, it looks exactly like this. They constantly confuse disagreement with disrespect. Since logical reasoning and measured debate take cognitive effort that they just can't handle, opposing opinions are instantly perceived as a personal attack. They literally cannot separate an intellectual argument from their own identity. If you disagree with their idea, in their mind, you're insulting who they are. Psychological studies clearly link this intellectual rigidity directly to poor emotional control. The subject shows low emotional intelligence, so they just react impulsively to things instead of pausing to think. They get offended super easily and consistently fail to regulate their anger or frustration. While a flexible mind pauses and responds, the rigid mind just reacts. Okay, let's pivot sharply from the rigid mind and look at its exact opposite, the highly adaptable, flexible mind. Where the rigid thinker is black and white, reactive, and surface level, the flexible mind is multidimensional, deeply controlled, and absolutely craves depth. Chapter 4,
Profile of the flexible mind. What exactly is going on inside a mind operating on a totally different wavelength? Unlike our first subject, the flexible mind uses complex cognitive processing, meaning they think in systems, in layers, and even in contradictions rather than just straight lines. It's a bit like playing 3D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They make these brilliant connections others completely miss. Their thinking is so multidimensional that one single thought can instantly trigger 10 others, letting them grasp the full complex picture. They also score super high in a really fascinating trait called self-transcendence. This is the psychological need to understand life way beyond basic, everyday material goals. They consistently choose to chase absolute truth over comfort, status, or validation. Surface-level living just never does it for them. They are driven by genuine purpose and a deep curiosity about the universe. And what's truly remarkable is how this flexibility handles highly charged emotional environments. They show what psychologists call cognitive control under stress. When everyone around them is panicking, they naturally detach and just observe logically. They process the variables, calculate the best outcome, and stay entirely steady. It is an incredibly rare superpower these days. But Chapter 5, The Weight of Awareness. It is absolutely vital to note in this explainer that this high flexibility is not without its own unique, often really heavy, psychological burdens. Having a fast-paced, highly aware mind carries a very real weight. The flexible mind experiences profound emotional intensity because they just process everything so deeply. They battle relentless perfectionism, holding themselves to almost impossible standards. And because they sustain this exhausting, constant inner dialogue, they often feel entirely misunderstood, basically drifting through life feeling like an outsider looking in. They also have high interpersonal sensitivity. They intuitively and instantly read micro-behaviors, a tiny shift in tone, a slight hesitation, all the words people purposely leave out. They instantly see right through dishonesty. And honestly, the hardest part about that level of awareness, it is very, very hard to unsee once you've noticed it. Ultimately, this isn't about being inherently better or worse. It's about having a mind wired for authenticity rather than just simple surface-level adaptation. It's a mind wired for more depth, more awareness, and more truth than most people can comfortably handle. It's just a completely different way of processing reality. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Look inward. Which of these psychological profiles truly dictates how you experience the world? Are you rigid and reactive, or are you flexible in seeking truth? Keep analyzing, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.